Bridging the divide between generational tattooers, at least the ones devoted to elevating the custom art, was a rare figure for the time. An open and generous mind that saw the old ways dying and believed that sharing important information was the key to tattooing's progression. And like his mentors before him, he nurtured the next generation.
Bill Baker is the most important person in Canadian tattooing as far as I'm concerned, as far as a person who has shaped the direction that Canadian tattooing has gone in.
Oh, the myth of Bill Baker. It was crazy. When I got to Sacred Heart, there was talk in there all the time of Bill. And Bill said this, and Bill does this, and I learned this from Bill. You never meet Bill. Bill's like this. He's almost like an enigma out there.
First meeting Bill Baker and seeing the scope of work that he was doing was really inspiring, because he was good at more than just one thing. He was good at everything back then, which you needed to be a Canadian tattooer.
Bill wandered into Sacred Heart one day. I had no idea who he was, and he was just kind of this, this kind of interesting, quirky little guy with dreadlocks and a suit. And he walks in and he asks if there's any work to be done. And I strolled up to the front counter and I was like, "Oh, hey, how's it going? I'm Adam." Shook his hand, and he kind of pushed his portfolio towards me, and in his Bill way, he was like, "Yeah, I'm in Vancouver. I'm just kind of looking for maybe a place to tattoo right now. I'm just figuring it out." I'm like, "Oh, that's cool, man. Right on." Open his portfolio. Dear motherfucking Christ. Holy shit, this guy can tattoo.
He was doing layouts that were so illustrative and so not tattooing. It was tattooing, but it was above and beyond in my eyes at that point, because there weren't a lot of guys doing that illustrative stuff that there's so many of them doing it nowadays. And I think Bill was sort of one of those, groundbreakers when it comes to that stuff.
I think after sort of like Paul Jeffries and the Dutchman and all that, Bill Baker was like the first one of the sort of new and up and coming generation of tattooists to really be doing amazing, like really, really refined tattooing.
He was one of those guys that started considering the whole human form from a variety of perspectives, not just like the Japanese perspective. He carefully considered the human form. And so a lot of the big work that I've been fortunate enough to see that Bill's done, I get that same sense from it, where he's looking at the skin that isn't tattooed as much as the skin that is.
He knows everything about the technical aspects of tattooing, everything about the artistic aspects of tattooing. He just puts so much passion and love and care into his tattooing, and he wasn't afraid to share that with people. There was a time in tattooing where there were a lot of people, and still to this day, there's a lot of tattooers who just won't share information with other people around them. They won't share their secrets. And Bill was just the opposite of that. He wanted to see all of us succeed. And he wanted to see all of us succeed because he knew that it was for the greater good of Canadian tattooing.
He was kind of the guy between the old guard of tattooing in Canada and the young guys. There was like a big age gap between the Paul Jeffries and the Dutchmans of Canada, and then the guys of Sacred Heart or Dutchman Tattoos or Tattoo Mania. There's a massive age gap, and the two worlds didn't really mesh. They didn't really, just because demographically they're different. But Bill Baker was a guy working with Dutchman, working with Smile and Buddha, but also working with, Pierre Champlain in Montreal, and he was working with the guys at Sacred Heart and taking that knowledge and passing it on. He was really that torchbearer.
Somebody would come in and ask about tattoos, like, "Hey, how do I buy a tattoo gun? It's a fucking tattoo machine. Fuck off, beat it." Whereas Bill would be like, "Oh, this is a place you want to see," and he would like pull out like the catalog, and it's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "They're gonna do it no matter what. I would rather them like do it the best as they can." He's like, "I'm still gonna make money covering their stuff."
He had an attitude that if we create a positive environment for all these young guys to tattoo in. And if we share information with these people who are talented and genuine and really interested in doing something, it's for the greater good of everybody. And that really bucked the trend of hiding secrets from people that was common in tattooing at the time. And for that reason, he has been Canada's by far biggest influence in creating quality tattooing.
What Bill was doing was he was taking that large scale classical art for custom tattooing and giving that knowledge to the younger guys. So there was a real form that, you know, John had carved out about how tattoo should fit on the body. Same with Paul Jeffries. But no one was passing that on to the younger guys. I mean, John was in his studio and Paul was in his studio, but outside of there, it wasn't really getting traction. And Bill comes along to Sacred Heart and drops all this information on them, and suddenly those guys have this new information to follow. They have this new path, new recipes, these new tricks, you know, and that's really what made a big difference there. Same with Montreal, same with Toronto, Tattoo-Rama in Toronto.
What he had done is he had taken a lot of Paul's structure, reincorporated it through his own eyes, but like worked it into a popular medium, right? Like, so I mean, Bill was coming out of the punk scene in the 80s when he started tattooing. There was no meeting point for what Bill Baker was doing and what anybody else was doing. Nobody in Toronto was doing sleeves. Is a conceptual idea of a sleeve. So, I mean, Bill really brought an entirely new dimension to the concept of tattooing.
He was holding enough knowledge that he was able to bring everything together. Some of the new sensibilities, along with a lot of the old rules. Like he would, you know, he knew what to bend, what would break. And he could bring the classic styles in, but still with a different twist, and all executed technically flawlessly.
Originally from Calgary, he would have brought it to Toronto. And then he left, coming back out to West Coast to be with a Dutchman, and then eventually end up being with us at Sacred Heart.
He was passing knowledge on to Steve Moore. He was passing Chad Woodley, Sean Headley, Craig Driscoll, Dave Green, Michael Johnson. That had a big impact on that small nucleus. And then from there, he had a shop in Toronto called Tattoo-Rama, and brings that all that knowledge he learned on the West Coast from John and from Smile and Buddha. And what does he do? He gets a bunch of young kids working in there. You know, they're eager to learn. And what are they learning? They're learning how to do custom tattoos. So all those guys were great students. You know, Em Ledee, Oz, Shane Faulkner, Dave Wildenbauer, Scott McEwen. They were soaking everything up. And they all opened shops in Toronto. And what did they do when they opened shops? They hired young artists. You know, like Bill, all those artists from Tattoo-Rama, then all the shops they opened and all the artists they inspired. And today, I mean, Toronto's a crazy big city with great tattoo culture. It's pretty easy to trace it back to where it started anyway.
For then a few years of all the new influences that he was giving and getting, he then took it back to Montreal. And I think that was where the big change kind of happened in Montreal. Like, it was already changing with Dave C and all those guys, but then all of a sudden there's Bill in Montreal working out of a street shop. So yeah, so there, look at that. Sometimes I don't think about that stuff, and then I start reflecting on it, and it's like, holy shit. Bill dragged influence to here, swirled it all up with new influence, took it all the way back out here, got new influence, transferred shops, and then all the way back to Montreal. Just a wake of Bill, isn't there?
He created, I think, a movement, you know, and you do look at the family tree effect. It's like all of us went and opened our own shops, and then we produced the next generation of tattooers.
The up-and-coming generation of tattooists really do owe that guy an awful lot, you know, whether they realize it or not.
disguise. We were made to chase the light, but you got saved on a moonless night. Get free tonight, set it all on fire. And fever dreams, talking in your sleep, said